Labs. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that background. And you'll notice that in my work, I do have a mix of both academic experience and more entrepreneurial experience. And so you can see prior to my time at Mount St. Mary's, I was a faculty member for many, many years and also a department chair in the field of educational technology. And my specialization is digital learning or online learning, and in particular, training online teachers and training online instructional designers. And in conjunction with that, and why I don't know, but always at the same time, I've also had companies that have been related to my work, and I think it's the entrepreneurial spirit in me, and all of my companies at this point have been focused on training online teachers. And before I go any further, I see my camera blinking, so I just want to make sure that we're still getting the feed. So I'm going to zoom out for just a minute. And can you just type if you're still hearing my stream and seeing me? Can you let me know? Type a 1. Yes. Yes, great. Okay, I will go back. When the camera blinked, I was concerned that I lost the connection. Okay. And so my most recent company, which I'm still running, is GoGo Labs. And GoGo Labs was actually a spin-out from my lab at Boise State University, where we invented a unified learning management system. And that was just taking some of the principles that we're learning about what makes games engaging to students, why students play them, and adults play them, and for many, many hours, and how we can overlay some of those principles into the educational experience to create the same type of engagement that people experience when they play games. So that's what I've been doing with my career. And I encourage you, if you're on Twitter, to please follow me on Twitter. I tweet about EdTech innovation and empowering faculty and teachers. Okay, so let's get started on communities of practice. This is really important. I'm sure most of you are in several communities of practice, and maybe you don't even identify them that way. So the way Wegner's definition of community practice is groups of people who share a concern or passion for something they do and learn how to do it better as they interact regularly. So if you're in an academic department, sometimes even the academic department can be really powerful as a form of a community of practice. When faculty are working together on projects and research, co-teaching, things like that, I could even see a department being that way. But we know that COPs share 3 characteristics. They have a domain of interest or a subject area. And so this is a shared domain or a shared area, and it could be anything. It could be people who like to go camping. It could be people who are studying estuary tidal patterns, whatever the topic is, but there is a domain. It's not just a network of people. And so there's this particular topic that we're all interested in or domain. There's a community, and it's a place where we do our thing. And so the Thank you for welcoming me back. I dropped out and I came back and it had a recording sign, so I'm not sure if that's what did it or not, but we'll get back. Okay, great. I've done these so many times and had so many technical issues. We learn to be patient and work our way through. This is just a screenshot of one form of learning community. If you're not a member on LinkedIn, I would definitely encourage you as a professional to create a LinkedIn profile. Not only can you connect with colleagues on LinkedIn, and this is where I track all of my professional relationships. It's not really in Google. I mean, I might have contact information, but LinkedIn is where I hook up with people professionally online. And one of the functions inside LinkedIn is the ability to join groups. And not only join groups, but you can create groups. And so you can see this is my group page, and it's showing highlights of news out of groups that I belong to, like ISTE, and new conversations that are going on that I may want to participate in. And these were just some stats about groups. Over 8,000 groups are created weekly. 99% of companies on LinkedIn have employees that actively share content. There are over 1 million blog posters posting in groups in LinkedIn. And so LinkedIn is a really, really valuable tool that you'll not only want to think about, possibly having a LinkedIn page for your department, for your institution, which I'm sure it does, but within your courses. And so it's possible that if you have a course on construction management and you want to begin empowering your students through professional relationships, that you might set up a LinkedIn group, make it private to start, and eventually you could open it up to the public. But think about these social network technologies not only as something you can do outside the classroom, but something you can do as part of the learning experience itself. And then I wanted to share with you some additional examples. On the top, you see this is Aerial SIG. This is a special interest group that I belong to out of AERA, and we study applied research in immersive learning environments. And then in addition to web-based social media, we also get virtual worlds and simulations where there are professional communities. So one example of that on the left is Techsoup. In Virtual World Second Life, Techsoup is a nonprofit of people who provide technical support. And so that's a community that comes together there in the form of avatars. They're able to walk around in the virtual world, go places together, see each other's faces, have a form of identity that's a little more personal and interactive than you might in a page like Facebook. And then we also have people actually having communities of practice in game environments. So WOW in Schools is a group of educators that meet in World of Warcraft. And if you're not familiar with World of Warcraft, it's the largest MMO, massive multiplayer online game in the world, with tens of millions of players and many educators that use the space to teach a lot of different subjects, language arts, mathematics through the auction house, and many things like that. And so communities of practice can come in many ways, shapes, and forms. And really, I wanted to talk to you about communities of practice as just being one aspect of your PLN or your personal learning network. So these days, with our mobile phones, and now more than 50% of internet traffic and web access is happening on mobiles, information is available to us. We're flooded with it. And so part of our goal as a professional learner in developing your own personal learning network, and you're doing this whether you're conscious of it or not, right? You might log into LinkedIn, you might participate in some forums or Twitter, you may read blogs, things like that, is possibly to think about becoming more conscious about where you're getting your information, you're collecting it, you're sharing it back out, you're brainstorming with others, but to also help your students as part of their professional development learn to think about their professional learning network. And this is one activity. It's hard to read the text, but you get the idea. This is an actual task I ask my students to do when the first day they come into class. And this is called social network knowledge construction. And at the middle of this graph, for example, is Kay in blue, and she's a student. And I ask students to list all of the social networks where they're engaging in communities of practice, and just everything they can think of. And where do you hang out online or in real life? That's what we're looking at. And once they get that down, and Kay is a very complex learner. She's highly, highly connected. Some students will fill this out and only have 4 bubbles. It doesn't matter. What does matter is to begin thinking about where are you getting your knowledge so you continue to evolve as a professor, as an educator, and how are you sharing that knowledge back out. Then we ask our students to color code them by their level of activity. And so social network knowledge construction is a way of thinking about, in communities of practice, we often come in as a newbie or an observer. We're not active yet. We're just listening and seeing what the community's like. And that's a very valid learning activity. Often, and we're trying to figure out what the norms are in those communities. And once we decide we want to participate, we'll introduce ourselves, we share a link, we start creating things, maybe we'll write a blog post, and maybe we'll get a little more involved and move into leadership with the activity, with the community, possibly hosting a forum or some type of event like that. And so just a recognition of where people are spending the time, how they're spending the time, and then I challenge my students, and that's what you see in purple in this color, is during our course, I'd like you to at least explore one new community of practice that you're not currently a member of, and find out if it's valuable for you in your own personal learning. And so what are some types of things that you can do in communities of practice? Well, honestly, we go there oftentimes thinking about, well, I can learn really neat stuff, and I can engage with other people and take action. We can write conference proposals or present at a conference together, or go out into the community and actually do good works in the community. For me, though, personally, what I get out of communities of practice are the relationships. Oftentimes, I find that the people I meet in communities where I have a shared domain interest, and then we engage, we develop our practice together, we create the domain knowledge, we take action together. These relationships have lasted throughout my career for 20 or 30 years, and now I'm giving away my age. But they're very, very powerful in terms of engagement for myself professionally, and that's why I encourage my students to get involved in them as well, because they're so powerful for keeping you engaged in the learning experience. So learning becomes more than just reading a chapter and taking a test, that I'm actually meeting people, I'm learning things, I'm applying things, and I'm taking action with it. And so just to wrap up this section, if you're interested in developing communities of practice, EDUCAUSE has published a design guide. It's short, but it's everything that you need to get yourself started on how you might think about setting up, for example, if you're wanting an online teacher community of practice at your school, and the steps involved to inquire, design, prototype, and then launch your community of practice. And again, it doesn't have to be the whole school. It could be just a course that you're teaching. And so I'm going to pause there before I move into the next section and just see if there are any comments or allow you to summarize. So I'm going to come back into the room for just a minute, I think. Okay, so let me know if you can hear me. The question was, could you please elaborate on how to develop a community of practice? Um, yeah, so if we go back to this idea, right, and what EDUCAUSE, and I'm going to close this so you can see it a little better, and that way I can see your dialogue. So this idea that, let's say that you've got a group of people that you think you want to build a community of practice with around a topic of interest. Step one is this inquiring. It's identifying the audience, the purpose, and the goals, and the vision for the community, the form that it's going to take, right? Then we move into the design stage, the types of activities, what technology are we going to use? Are we going to put it in LinkedIn? Are we going to have a Facebook page? Are we going to create, maybe you might have a community of practice inside your learning management system. And then step 3, which is prototype, is a really important step. A lot of times we don't think about pilots and prototypes when we create learning experiences. I love to pilot and collect data and then reiterate. And whenever I'm piloting something brand new, we pose it that way. Hey, this is a pilot. We're not sure how it's going to work. And that's the whole point of it. We're going to get feedback. We're going to tweak things. We're going to collect data. And we need you to help us understand how to make this better. And we often pose it to our students that way when we're in that prototyping stage before we'll go out and launch at a larger stage. Which methods do you suggest for attracting employed and busy students to participate in the groups? That's a really good question because people are so busy, especially when you're working with adult learners. And so honestly, the most critical thing is that there has to be a purpose for it, or they have to be very passionate about the topic. So for example, if you set it up as a class assignment, and the class isn't, hello, I'm back again. Thank you. I'm so sorry for the disruptions, and I thank you for your patience. Okay, I saw a question about the strengths and weaknesses of each tool in detail. I just got a, okay, am I okay? As on to continue? I saw a Skype message on the back end. I will comment real quickly about the tools, and then if you don't mind, I will move into our next section to talk, because some of these things overlap, and you'll see how each of these topics that were chosen, actually one feeds into the other. I did want to mention, think about in your fields, so I'm not sure if you're all in one area of construction management or in business, but different fields tend to use different social networking technologies differently. And so, for example, people in business programs working on a master's degree in business, for example, or business is LinkedIn, always. Many people are hired out of LinkedIn now. Jobs happen there, recommendations happen there. And so when you work in a field like business, you definitely should be in LinkedIn and trying to think about integrating those types of communities into your courses. In the field of education, where you're training teachers in project management, yeah, I would think in project management, LinkedIn would be critical. And I was going to say in a field like education, at least in the United States, teachers often set up pages in Facebook. And so these would be pages for their classes, if they're college classes, or if they're young students, they might be pages for the classroom and the parents. And so oftentimes you'll find that the choice of technology will be chosen just based on the field and where those people tend to hang out. If it's okay, I'd like to move on to the next section. Is that okay? To talk about online teaching? Okay, great. I was asked to talk about faculty roles and responsibilities, and I really wanted to reframe this as quality online teaching because I'm going through this right now at my own university. When I first came in, there was not a lot of trust among our faculty with regards to online programs. They weren't thought very highly of in terms of quality. And we've worked really hard over the last 4 months to get focused on what makes a quality online learning experience. And absolutely, the two main criteria are the faculty members teaching and the course design. And those are the two pieces that have to come together. And so I did want to talk a little bit about what that type of teaching looks like. And so let me make this bigger. I think that might be easier to see. Okay, so I'm sure most of you know that when you transition to online learning, a really huge goal is that we become very, very learner focused. That the curricular experience and the teaching experience is personal. It's situated in the learner's context, or we try to make it situated in their context. There are goals, things that they're working on. We try to customize it not only through the digital content, but through hopefully student choice. We found that student choice, and especially in gamified learning, is one of the most critical in creating learner engagement. That we keep it community-centered, and that the community is highly interactive and transparent, that it's not just an isolated student sitting at a desk working with a computer, that we want these to be social, interactive experiences, and these types of the communities of practice that we just shared help us create that feel. They also need to be reflective. Students need the feedback loop, not only from the instructor, but their peers, and self-reflection, the opportunity to reflect on their own work, and they need to be responsive, just in time. So, you know, many universities have policies like I respond within a maximum of 24 hours, except on the weekends, or things like that. It's just sharing your boundaries as a professor, but that we're not waiting a week to get feedback on work, or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, like we may have in the old days. And so just a little bit of thinking about when this was a study that was done in 2007, and I think these things still hold true today, that when you compared face-to-face with online and how things are evolving, we're moving from teacher-centered to learner-centered, from teacher-led discussions to student-controlled and generated discussions, where the instructor has to give up a little more control. And so in face-to-face, where we had the teacher as the leader or the sage on the stage, now we have the teacher as the facilitator and the guide on the side. And so you can see this shift towards being innovative and democratic, and facilitating students' learning can be quite the challenge for faculty that aren't familiar with that role. So not only are faculty who are moving into blended learning, dealing with how do I use the technology, and I don't know, do I email, do I get in Skype, how do I interact with my students? They're also dealing with new forms of pedagogy. And so just creating that awareness and a willingness to buy into those evolving forms of pedagogy and providing professional development at the university level is really critical to make that transition happen. And so here's a little bit about that shift that I was just mentioning, where traditional models were one way. And really, if you think about it, these traditional models reflected media back in the old days. And so this shows you how technology impacts what's happening in society. In the old days, media was one way. TVs went one way. You couldn't talk back to the TV. Radios went one way. All media was unidirectional. And now this is why social networking technologies and the internet itself is so powerful, mobile learning technologies, is that communication not only flows both ways, but it flows many ways. And so now on the right side, we can put the student at the center, and they're able to talk not only to their teacher, but they can talk to their peers. They can talk to other experts at other universities. They can join communities of practice. They can follow Twitter channels and tweet chats. And so this student has this opportunity to open themselves up because of the shift in how technologies have changed to many, many sources of knowledge, not just the teacher. Really important piece to think about, and I see I have a typo, I'm sorry for that. As you're thinking about the faculty role, is to distinguish between the faculty's role in designing the course itself versus teaching the course. Every university handles this in a different way. At our university, we encourage the faculty member to design the course in conjunction with an instructional designer. So we'll actually pay the faculty member $3,000. They're assigned to an instructional designer, and over the course of about 4 weeks, we'll take the existing live course and we'll begin creating modules and supporting that faculty member at whatever level of support they need. So if they need videos made, if they don't understand how to work, and we teach in Canvas, that's our learning management system, we'll work with them on organizing the content, creating the content, maybe suggesting new ways of doing activities because we have more options now that we're online. Once the course design is done, then we've got to focus on highly engaging online teaching, right? And so we actually have a professional development course that we offer as a basic, but then we have a whole series of other opportunities that instructors can take part in through the year to work on not only, like I said, learning new tech tools, which is where the beginner online teacher is, but then the more advanced online teacher wants to get into exploring new instructional strategies. So we have faculty innovation grants that we offer for faculty that want to pilot new things. We don't care if it's successful the first time. What we want is faculty who are willing to innovate and just try new things, and always be in that mindset of innovation, and failure's okay, but what we're doing is not just remaining stagnant. We're always trying to evolve. If you're looking for standards or guidelines for quality online teaching, and this is what we did, we actually created a task force to come up with criteria for our faculty of what we wanted for best practice in online teaching. And then from those criteria, we create all of our workshops and provide supports and developed our own faculty community. These sets of standards on the left, maybe you're familiar with some of them: Quality Matters, the Sloan C, which is now called the Online Learning Consortium Quality Scorecard, is very popular. The INACOL National Standards for Quality Online Teaching is really the only full set of standards that I'm aware of currently for online teachers. It's extremely comprehensive, but it was originally written for K-12 students, or kindergarten through 12th grade, which is all students before they get to college, if you're not familiar with that. So these instruments are available to you. Not a lot of universities use them, and you can see, or they used it as a resource to develop their own, which is what we did at our campus. And then I'm just going to share with you 3 examples of that people have adopted. So at Purdue, they created their 7 principles of good practice. And you can see they're about setting expectations for the learner, addressing diverse needs, student-faculty contact, etc. So this is an interesting model, and you notice on their model they have to establish a sense of community. So this community piece keeps coming back up. It's really, really important. Here's a model we looked at, the Penn State model. They focus on competencies and these 3 areas of pedagogy, technical, and administrative. From our perspective, this model was interesting because it's a checklist, like you can log into the course, you know basic computer operations, but we felt that it was more of a model that we should, faculty should use to self-assess before they begin online teaching for us. And then if they feel that they're missing skills, we have modules built to help get them ready for online teaching. So for us, this was an interesting model, but we really wanted that as a startup before they ever came into the online teaching environment. And then we're actually heading off in this direction with this idea. Andrews University created a community of inquiry that centers around social presence, cognitive presence, and teaching presence. And then in the middle of all that is the educational experience between the student and the instructor. And so I thought this was really fascinating. Ours, if you think of Andrews as a community of inquiry, we're framing ours at Mount St. Mary's as more of a community of innovation and really adopting an innovative mindset. And so every institution needs to personalize their model, but I would suggest that if you don't have a model, that you get a group together and review standards and think about what model makes sense for your institution. Okay, so I'm at my 3rd section, and I'm going to pause there for just a second. And
so can we just stop here for a few minutes? Do you hear me now?
the oh, the camera. Okay. So let me pull that back up, share my screen. Okay. Okay. I'm going to start here. I apologize. Oh, I was talking about setting the tone in my classroom.
Can you hear me well now?
I can. Thank you. So I should just move on to the last topic now.
Can you just keep?
Yes, I'll just keep going. Okay, so just to wrap up our session today,
I'm
talking about
your last topic. Then at the end of your presentation, we can come up with some questions.
Okay, great. So regarding future trends, I don't make these up on my own. I rely on people smarter than me to do that. The New Media Consortium every year puts out a report called the Horizon Report, and it looks at higher education, it looks at nonprofits, it looks at different areas. And this is the results of the 2016 report that just recently came out. And this may be hard to read, but it talks about trends, short-term impact, midterm, and long-term. So short-term is right now in the next 1 year, midterm is in the next 2 to 3 years, and then long-term is 4 years and on. And what's really interesting about how they frame these trends is that they're in relation to development and technology. So please understand that as technologies evolve, trends evolve. We have new function that we didn't have before. We change our thinking about how to use technology in a new way, and so the trends keep evolving, and then the technology evolves as the trends evolve. They have a reciprocal relationship. So I'm going to talk about short-term and two short-term and two midterm trends that we're seeing right now, with a growing focus on measuring learning and increasing use of blended learning designs, and how learning spaces are changing, and we're shifting to deeper learning approaches through the changes in technology. Okay, so let me just start with BYOD, which is bring your own device, and I'm very curious to know if you allow students to and encourage students to bring their own device into classrooms at your university. So this is the idea that we would
برای ادامه تحصیل دکترام شکل داد که تمامشون دنبال دانشگاه مجازی بگردن که راحت‌تر ادامه تحصیل کنن. شاید خیلی از مثلا افراد مثلا خانواده داشتن، مثلا بچه‌ها بودن، خیلی برای مثلا خانم‌ها خیلی سخت بود. یکی از مزیتاش بود. در این که لرنینگ مجازی اصلا نیستش که چیزی رو کم بشه از زمان. در واقع مثلا هیچ وقت پشیمون نشدم. واقعا اگر برگردم به سال 93 واقعا می‌تونم روز رو انتخاب کنم و دوباره میام درس کنم.
دانشگاه مهربان از سال 1383 کار خودش رو آغاز کرده و در واقع میشه گفتش با اینکه 10 سال گذشته ولی پیشرفت خیلی خوبی داشته و به زودی هم شاهد این هستیم که دانشگاه مهربان بتونه دانشجویان دوران دکترا رو بگیره و خود من به شخصه با اینکه فارغ التحصیل دانشگاه مجازی دانشگاه مهربان هستم ترجیح میدم که جزء اولین شرکت کنندگان توی مقطع دکترا در این دانشگاه پذیرفته.
سوال چی بود؟
تشکر میکنم از جناب آقای دکتر شاهزادی که با بیاناتشون به طور کامل امتیازات و مشخصات و ویژگی‌های مهر البرز رو بیان فرمودن. در این بخش از برنامه دعوت میکنیم از جناب آقای دکتر سعید روحانی، معاون آموزشی مؤسسه و سرپرست محترم دانشگاه فناوری اطلاعات، همچنین جناب آقای دکتر وحید نظری از اساتید محترم و شناخته شده رشته مدیریت پروژه که در حال حاضر رئیس هیئت مدیره انجمن مدیریت پروژه هستند به عنوان سرپرست دانشکده مهندسی. خواهش میکنم تشکیلشون بفرمایید. همچنین دعوت مجدد میکنم از جناب آقای دکتر شاهزادی به عنوان سرپرست دانشگاه مدیریت که در جایگاه تشکیل خواهش میکنم. تشکیل
سلام عرض می‌کنم خدمت
و دانشجویان عزیز پذیرفته شده در مقطع کارشناسی ارشد. خب توضیحاتی رو که دوست بزرگوارمون آقای دکتر شاهحسینی مهر البرز، مزیت‌ها، پتانسیل‌ها مطرح کردن که من بسیار جامع بود. نکاتی رو من بیشتر با تمرکز و دانشکده مهندسی خدمت می‌کنم. دانشکده مهندسی در واقع شروعش با رشته مهندسی صنایع بود. سال 1389 اولین ورودی‌ها رو ما داشتیم. بعد به مرور شکل گرفت. سال 1390 رشته مدیریت پروژه ساخت رو ما در واقع به صورت مجازی شروع کردیم. بعد 91 رفتیم سراغ مهندسی ساخت که بیشتر از دیسیپلین عمران بود. 92 رشته مهندسی مالی و بعد 94 مهندسی محیط زیست. دانشکده شکل در واقع تقریبا تو رشته‌هایی رو که در رشته‌هایی که امکان برگزاری رشته به صورت مجازی بود. دو رشته‌هایی که ماهیت میان رشته‌ای داشت. بیشتر البرز دنبال تو بخش مهندسی دنبال اینها بود. برای اینکه احساس می‌شد که ارشد رشته‌های معمولی زیاد برای جامعه نمیتونه مفید باشه. رشته‌های میان رشته‌ای مثل فرضاً مهندسی محیط زیست از رشته عمران می‌گیریم، مدیریت پروژه از رشته‌های معماری و صنایع و عمران می‌گیریم. افراد عملاً تو این رشته وارد یک دیسیپلین جدید میشن و تجربه البرز تو این زمینه بسیار موفق بوده این دوره‌ها و امسال باز مهندسی صنایع با گرایش مدیریت نوآوری و فناوری به عنوان رشته جدید اومده این خانواده البرز و در بخش رشته دانشکده مهندسی. نکاتی که در ارتباط با رشته مهندسی میتونم مطرح بکنم بازدیدهاییست که تلاش میشه که صورت داده بشه به دانشجو چون که رشته جنبه کاربردی داره. باز تاکید بر مزیت رشته میان رشته بسیار مفیده. ما تو دوره مثلا مهندسی ساخت یا مدیریت پروژه داشتیم افرادی که در دهه 50 دهه 60 فارغ التحصیلی بودن، رفتن تو صنعت، حتی در سمت‌های مدیر عامل یا قائم مقام شرکت‌های پیمانکاری. الان واقعا صورت مسئله دارن، با صورت مسئله میان تو میدان البرز و پروژه‌هایی که میگیرن یا در واقع دروسی رو که باید برایش تمریناتی رو داشته باشن موقعی که میان بحث میکنن واقعا با این صورت مسئله میان و برایشون مفیده و بعد از فارغ التحصیلی به نحو این ارتباط با مهر البرز دارن از منظر حمایتایی که میکنن. نکته بارز و مهمی که از منظر من تو البرز خیلی میدرخشه اینه که فرآیندهای کاری تو البرز کاملا نهادینه شده. یک سازمان چابک هست. شاید ارتباطی که دانشجوها با مدیران گروه دارن در البرز بسیار بسیار پررنگ‌تر نسبت به دانشگاه‌های معمولی. ارتباط هم تو فضای الکترونیکی هم پاسخگویی مدیران گروه ها هستش و یک سازمان چابک هست و پیش نیاز یک سیستم لرنینگ هم همین میتونه باشه. سازمان بسیار چابکه، شما به راحتی مسائلتون با مدیران گروه میتونید در میان بگذارید و درخواست جلسه و درخواست مشاوره داشته باشید. باز در رشته‌های مهندسی باز موردی که میتونه مزیت البرز باشه اینکه البته بقیه رشته‌ها هست اما تو مهندسی خیلی بارز هست اجازه اخذ پایان نامه به دانشجوهایی که جزء دانشجویان برتر هستن. این یک مزیت ایجاد میکنه. اولا اونایی که توانش رو دارن به سمت البرز خواهند اومد، احساس نمیکنن که البرز بازدارنده خواهد بود. ثانیاً اونهایی که تو صنعت بودن مسئله دارن میتونن این مسائلشون در قالب پایان نامه‌های پژوهشی انجام بدن. باز کسایی که تجربه داشتن معمولا پایان نامه‌های خوبی رو میتونن تو البرز در چارچوب این بحث پایان نامه و پژوهش و انجام بدن. ببینم بقیه نکات رو به خوبی دوستمون آقای دکتر شاهحسینی مطرح کردن. حالا پس از توضیحاتی که بقیه همکاران خدمتتون ارائه می‌کنن اگه سوالی باشه میکروفونی در واقع در اختیارتون قرار داده میشه که ما خدمتتون باشیم و پاسخ بدیم. تشکر می‌کنم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. عرض ادب و خوشامدگویی دارم خدمت تمام پذیرفته شدگان خانواده مهرعرض. من خوشحالم که در حضور شما مشتاقان و عزیزان هستم. بنده سرپرست دانشکده فناوری اطلاعات و کوچک شما در خدمت شما هستم برای توضیحاتی که در مورد دانشکده خدمت متقاضیان عرض خواهم کرد. دانشکده فناوری اطلاعات با توجه به سابقه‌ای که در مجموعه مهرعرض داره، صاحب قدیمی‌ترین رشته مجموعه و همینطور بیشترین تعداد دانشجو در مجموعه مهرعرض هست که عرض خواهم کرد. از سال 1386 اولین رشته‌ای که پذیرش دانشجو در مجموعه مهرعرض صورت گرفت رشته مدیریت فناوری اطلاعات بود که اکنون مبحث گرایش مدیریت دانش، سیستم‌های اطلاعاتی پیشرفته و مدیریت منابع اطلاعاتی در این رشته اخذ دانشجو می‌کنیم. یکی از رشته‌های دانشکده فناوری اطلاعات رشته مهندسی فناوری اطلاعات هست که اون هم در 3 گرایش مجزا شامل مدیریت سیستم‌های اطلاعاتی، معماری سازمانی و تجارت الکترونیک در خدمت دوستان است. در 2 سال گذشته رشته جدیدی که خانواده ما پیدا است تحت عنوان مجموعه علوم کامپیوتر و علوم تصمیم هم در واقع در این دانشکده قرار گرفته. من ابتداء برای دوستانی که متقاضی این رشته‌ها هستن آرزوی موفقیت دارم و تبریک عرض می‌کنم خدمتشون به دلیل اینکه جایگاه فناوری اطلاعات امروزه بر کسی پوشیده نیست. فناوری اطلاعات نه تنها رشته تحصیلی شما در امروزه بلکه آینده کشورها و سازمان‌ها رو خواهد ساخت. جایگاه و اهمیت مدیریت و برنامه‌ریزی و مهندسی و توسعه فناوری همونطور که از مجموعه‌های مثل مهرعرض برمیاد نقش کلیدی در ساخت کشور، توسعه و بقیه موارد داره. ظرفیت فعال فناوری اطلاعات نه تنها در دنیا حتی در کشور ما هنوز به صورت محدود وجود داره و اگر این ظرفیت فعال بشه بیش از حضور متخصصان و فارغ التحصیلان رشته فناوری اطلاعات سازمان‌ها و مجموعه‌ها نیاز به این متخصصین دارن. پس رشته‌های فناوری اطلاعات رشته‌هایی که نه تنها الان نیاز مجموعه‌های ما بلکه من به شما قول میدم آینده ما بیش از آنچه که امروز وابسته به فناوری خواهد شد و جایگاه و نقش افرادی که این فناوری رو درک کنند، براش برنامه‌ریزی کنند، اون رو مهار کنند، در اختیار جامعه، در اختیار سازمان قرار بدن بسیار زیاده و از این لحاظ من تبریک عرض می‌کنم به دوستانی که واقعاً رشته رو انتخاب کردن با اون دیدی که نسبت به این قضیه داشتن. ویژگی‌های رشته‌های فناوری اطلاعات در مجموعه مهرعرض در 3 حوزه قرار میگیره. اولیش قرابت نزدیک با مدل یادگیری الکترونیکه. همونطور که از ابتدای برنامه با این مدل آشنا شدید مبتنی است بر خودمحوری، مبتنی است بر یادگیری فعال، مبتنی است بر زیرساخت‌های الکترونیک و من خدمت همه دانشجویان عرض می‌کنم شما در مجموعه مهرعرض دانشجوی هزاره سومید، دانشجویی هستید که قابل مقایسه با بقیه مجموعه‌ها نخواهید بود. جایگاهی خواهید داشت که یادگیری درونی شده و فعالی در شما رخ میده که این یادگیری مهمتر از آن چیزی است که یاد میگیرید. این روش به شما در آینده زندگیتون کمک میکنه در تمام مراحل. در این حوزه شک نکنید. پس قرابت نزدیک رشته فناوری اطلاعات با مدل یادگیری الکترونیکمون در مجموعه یک فرصت خیلی خوبی برای دانشجویان فناوری اطلاعات ایجاد کرده. نه تنها دروس خودشون رو میگذرونن بلکه اصلا با این نوع مدل کسب و کار، با این نوع روش‌ها بیشتر آشنا میشن. جای تاکید داره دوباره در مورد مجموعه مهر البرز هم عرض شد خدمت شما. اولین مجموعه‌ای که رشته‌های فناوری اطلاعات رو به صورت کاملا الکترونیکی ارائه کرد مجموعه مهر البرز بوده. بالغ بر 10 سال تجربه ارائه این دروس در قالب محتواها، روش‌های تدریس، همکاری اساتید دستیاران دانشجویان توی مجموعه وجود داره. ما در دانشکده فناوری اطلاعات بیش از 700 فارغ التحصیل داشتیم که الان 10 نفر از اونها دانشجویان دوره دکترا هستن و حتی دوره دکترای خودشون رو هم به اتمام رسوندن. از این لحاظ ما میتونیم بگیم که سطح کیفی فارغ التحصیلان ما و دانش آموختگان ما نه تنها کمتر از بقیه دانشگاه‌های حضوری یا حتی بقیه مجموعه‌های دنیا توی این مجموعه کمتر از اونها نیست. یک نکته دیگری که در دروس رشته‌های فناوری اطلاعات مد نظر قرار گرفته طراحی کاربردی اون دروس به گونه‌ای طراحی شدن که در بازار کار بیشتر مورد نیاز شما قرار بگیرن. انتخاب دروس مناسب، انتخاب اساتید مناسب، انتخاب اساتید با تجربه برای حضور در بازارهای کار این کمک رو ما کرد که دانشجویانمون رو مسلح کنیم نه تنها به دانش بلکه بینش کاربردی. و این دانش و بینش کاربردی باعث شده بیش از 80% فارغ التحصیلان ما تو رشته‌های مرتبط با خودشون الان دارن فعالیت میکنن، کار میکنن و موفقن. مدیران موفق مجموعه‌ها در این حوزه هستن. همونطور که فرمودن ایجاد فرصت پژوهش رو ما خدمت شما هستیم. یعنی مجموعه مهر البرز دانشکده فناوری اطلاعات بیشترین میزان تولید مقالات علمی رو هم داشته. یعنی دوستانی که تشریف میارن تا اون میزانی که همراهی شما باشه زیرساخت بدنه اساتید در خدمت شما هستن کار پژوهشی انجام بدید، پایان‌نامه حفظ کنید و هسته‌های پژوهشی برای فعالیت‌های شما وجود داره. در انتها عرض می‌کنم ما در دانشکده فناوری اطلاعات بیش از 30 استاد همکار از بهترین دانشگاه‌ها رو ازشون استفاده می‌کنیم و بهره مندیم و 60 عنوان درسی رو خدمت دانشجویان گرامی ارائه می‌کنیم. امیدوارم همونطور که اسم این برنامه هوشمندانه آموختن یا هوشمندانه بیاموزی ورود شما به مجموعه مهر البرز نقطه عطفی برای تبدیل شدن و تغییر زندگی شخصی و زندگی کاری شما باشه. ببخشید مصدق اوقات شدم، در خدمت شما هستم برای سوالات اگر نکته بود.
سلام مجدد. من عرایض اونجا گفتم ولی آقا دکتر رانی بدونی تعریف کرد که من یه بار دیگه ثبت نام کنم واسه فوق لیسانس خوندن تشکیل شدم با این بیان شیواشون حقیقتا همین گونه هست. من فقط راجع به دانشکده مدیریت کوتاه توضیح میدم چون عرایض اونجا گفتم دیگه زیاد خارج از مسئله جمع هستش. دانشکده مدیریت هم طبیعتا از سال 87 دانشگاه میشه گرفته با رشته MBA ما شروع کردیم و مدیریت صنعتی این رشته رو رشته‌های قدیمی ما هست که مثل دانشگاه‌های دیگه هم فارغ التحصیل داریم، هم دانشجوی دکتری داریم، چه تو دانشگاه تورنتو، چه تو دانشگاه اتاگای نیوزلند، چه تو دانشگاه تهرانی که ما اینجا هستیم. از فارغ التحصیلان همینجا توی بهترین دانشگاه داخل و خارج کشور قبول شدن. شاید یه دغدغه‌ای که خیلی از دوستانی که جوان هستن و میخوان ادامه تحصیل بدن همین باشه که با دوره الکترونیکی بعداً میتونن سد مصاحبه سدایی که وجود داره رو بگذرونن و بیان دوره دکتری بخونن که عرض می‌کنم مستواش وجود داره تو بهترین دانشگاه ها وجود داره که تو فرمون خیلی شما تو فارغ التحصیل شدن و یه فکر میاد این اتفاق افتاده پس نگرانی از این بابت وجود نداره. دانشکده مدیریت الان خب یک از رشته‌های بسیار پرطرفدار مثل رشته‌های دیگه که وجود داره رشته MBA هست که اصلا دوستان میدونن به ویژه دوستانی که فنی مهندسی یا علوم پایه میکنن واسه افزایش دانش مدیریتیشون که بعدا بتونن کسب و کارهای رو راه اندازی کنن یا کسب و کارهای خودشون رو به شیوه مطلوب مدیریت کنن و سودآور باشن میان رشته‌های MBA رو می‌خوان که دانش کاربردی مدیریت رو در حقیقت دارن و رشته‌های مثل مدیریت صنعتی که مدیریت صنایع رو در حقیقت بتونن داشته باشن. اینجا هم طبیعتا به تبع رشته‌ها ما در رشته مدیریت صنعتی ما یک از رشته‌های پرطرفدار و پرتقاضا است و خیلی دقت شده که از بهترین اساتید توی این حوزه از اساتید به نام توی این حوزه استفاده از دانشگاه‌های مختلف مدیر گروه خدمت آقای دکتر مختارزاده هستیم، هیئت علمی دانشگاه تهران هستم با تخصص تکنولوژی که احتمالاً خدمتتون خواهید بود و توی جمع سوالات این تخصصی این رشته پاسخ خواهید داد. تو رشته MBA مدت‌ها خود من هدایت می‌کردم، بعد از مدتی خدمت استاد بزرگوارم آقای دکتر منوریان رسیدیم، یک سالی هدایت کردن. آقای دکتر منوریان استاد تمام دانشگاه تهران همین دانشگاه هستن، فرصت مطالعاتی هستن کانادا، در بهمن ما برمیگردن. تا پایان فرصت مطالعاتی مجدد خود من امور رو دارم دو تا بخش رشته که داریم تا ایشون دوباره برگردم مجدد از بهمن ما آقای دکتر منوریان ان شاء الله شده سازم تو این بخش خدمتتون. من همچنین دلم میخواد نام ببرم از آقای دکتر زندی مدیر گروه صنایع ما که خدمتشون هستیم. آقای دکتر زندی پژوهشگران برجسته برتر کشور هستند و جزو 1% دانشمندان جهان هستند ایشون. من خواهش میکنم ایشون تشویق بکنم. پژوهشگران برتر مدیریت هستند آقای دکتر تو کل کشور و منطقه آسیا و این افتخار ماست که خدمت ایشون هستن مثل رشته‌های صنایع مهندسی مالی با هر گرایشی که هستن که انشاءالله ایشون هم خدمت شما خواهند بود اگر توضیح تخصصی لازم باشه این بخش انشاءالله هستن. امسال ما تو دانشگاه مدیریت یه رشته دیگه هم گرفتیم بازرگانی. من میتونم خواهش کنم دوستانی که بازرگانی امسال قبول شدن چه استراتژی چه در حقیقت گرایش بازاریابی دستاشون بیاره بالا که اون خداشون خیلی اصلا هم تغییر داره هم تغییر پایین. این رشته دوستان شما میدونید ما سالها دنبال مجوز این رشته بودیم. این رشته تو شورای تحول علوم انسانی وزارت علوم هیچ دانشگاهی تو 5 سال گذشته مجوز نگرفت، چون رشته‌های مثل مدیریت باید حتما شورای تحول علوم انسانی واسه گسترش مجوز جدید طی کنه که اتفاق بیفته. الحمدلله مجوز طی شد. تو اولین جایی که مجوز گرفتن خود ما بود با این گرایش که من این نوید آینده بازارکار بسیار خوبی رو به این دوستان و دوستان دانشگاهی خود رو پروموت کنم، این به دوستان دیگه که بازارکار بسیار خوبی رو دارن، هر گرایش در حقیقت بازرگانی و هم گرایش بازاری و هم گرایش استراتژیک. البته MBA هم دوستان ما که تحصیل میکنن بعد از ترم دوم تعیین گرایش کنن، گرایش خوبی هم داره، گرایش استراتژیک بازاری و نوآوری و گرایش دیگه که وجود داره. ان شاء الله ما بتونیم خدمات ارزنده‌ای رو تو دانشکده مدیریت خدمت دوستان باشیم به خاطر اینکه فرصت رو قدر بدونیم و ان شاء الله بتونیم اون دغدغه‌های ذهن شما تا جایی که زمان اجازه میده و این فضا اجازه میده پاسخگو باشیم. من این فرصت رو اجازه می‌خوام که بزرگوارم در اختیار شما قرار بدم و من واسه وقتی تاکید می‌کنم ما که بالا نشستیم آقای دکتر نظری که کاروان شدن عضو هیئت علمی دانشگاه شهید بهشتی هستند، آقای دکتر روحانی عضو هیئت علمی دانشگاه تهران هستند، ما شما هستیم، ولی افتخار می‌کنیم همه عضو خانواده مهر البرز بیش از 7-8 سال عضو خانواده مهر البرزتون به این خانواده حتی پیوست ها نکرد. خدمت همین دوستان هست من نمی‌دونم دوستان البته سالم فکر می‌کنم اونقدر کوتاه است، دوستانم جوون هستن صداشون رسا هست که اگه میکروفون هم نرسید فکر کنم صدا به ما برسه. دوستان هیچ کس سوالی نداره؟ یکی سرچه میشه سوال بپرسید، نگران نباشید. بفرمایید بزرگوار. آقا من از همه شما عذر می‌خوام اینقدر سررسید بودید نگاه به بالا میگم نگیرید ببخشید تو رو خدا. چشم ارادتمند همه دوستانی هستیم که طبقه دوم هستن و من عذرخواهی می‌کنم از همه بزرگوارانی که شرمنده شدیم به خاطر اینکه واقعا فضای سالن کوچیک بود، سر پای ایستادن بیرون سالن تشریف دارن. من از همه دوستان عذرخواهی می‌کنم، عذر ما رو بپذیرید. چشم ارادتمند حتی نگاه کنم. بزرگوار سوال کردم من نمی‌دونم چطوری آقا میتونیم میکروفون به دست بزرگوار صندلی اول ردیفی برسونیم و بعد ان شاءالله فرصتی که حتی بعد از پایان جلسه ما هستیم خدمتتون بفرمایید.
آقای دکتر قرار شد که از وسایل تجهیزاتی که دانشجویان یعنی نیاز دارن برای این دانشگاه بخوان استفاده کنن چیه؟ مثلا چه تجهیزاتی؟
پرزنتیشن فنی داریم که دوستان کلاً شما رو با نحوه کار کردن. حالا بعد از اینکه دوستانی که ان شاءالله ثبت نام میکنن که ما تو جلسه معارفه که مفصل خدمتشون هستیم، یعنی دوستان فنی ما، دوستان آموزشی ما به تفصیل خواهند اومد، پورتال باز میکنن، نمیدونم تی استفادهش میکنن، گام به گام با شما نحوه بارگذاری، استفاده از دروس، ارسال تمارین، کویز، همه اینا رو گام به گام خواهند داشت. امروز هم این بخشی ما داریم که آقای مهندس عباسی مدیر محترم فنی خدمتشون خواهیم بود که راجع به اینا صحبت می‌کنن. ابزارها رو معمولاً ابزارهای حوزه آموزش یادگیری الکترونیک هستن که کمک می‌کنن و خیلی هم یوزر فرندلی هستن. زیاد نگران نباشید، همه مانوال داره، همه راهنما داره. داخل مؤسسه کلی پشتیبان تلفنی داریم که ما حضور داریم و راهنمایی می‌کنیم بابت این مسائل. فقط مختصر بکنید به حد دوستان بفرمایید.
من بابت اینکه دغدغه دوستانم رفت بشه، آنچه شما برای ورود به دنیای یادگیری الکترونیکی میخوان فقط یک دیوایسه، حالا حتی اگر موبایلتون باشه، تبلتتون باشه یا پیسیتون باشه و یک حداقل اتصال به اینترنت. حالا دیگه حداقل اتصال به اینترنت امروزه توی ADSL هم حداقل 128 روی موبایل هم که ماشاءالله بهتر این اتصال برقرار. بقیه ابزارها، بقیه نرم افزارها رو دوستان توی پشتیبانی و ساپورت فنی خدمت شما میدن. دغدغه‌ای نداشته باشید. اون چیزی که الان شما دارید کافی است برای ورود به اینترنت. قسمت اول شاید برمیگشت به درست میگم شیوه ارزشیابی اساسی آموزش محور
تو دانشجویی انتخاب رشته یه توضیح خیلی مختصری در مورد آموزش
یادگیری هدفمند، توسعه هوشمند.